inside the man, not external to the man. The stronghold of your reasoning, of your perception, of your ideas. It could even be traditional ideas. It could be the mentality that you got from upbringing. It could be how you were raised that has formed something in you called a mindset. Maybe your attitude. And some attitudes could be very, very stubborn. Very stubborn attitudes that it takes only Christ's authority to break. Habits. That's why the best time to raise any man for Christ is when that life is tender and bendable. When the life is tender and malleable. You can beat it to any shape and size when it is tender. But when opinions and ideas have been formed, it's very difficult. Very difficult. All right, so this morning we're moving forward and we'll be talking about, as a major topic, Christ's discipleship model. Christ's discipleship model as a major theme, and then but under that we'll be looking at some sub-issues. Christ's discipleship model. Now, there is no other model with which to raise men effectively except the model that Jesus used and left behind for us as an example. The church can employ several other methods, several other models, but it will only lead to failure. Please listen to me. The church even today has adopted several methods and means of gathering people in an attempt to raise them. But you cannot use your human wisdom to actualize what Jesus initiated. Every initiative of Christ and everything that Jesus created or initiated or originated can only be preserved by his own wisdom. You cannot use human wisdom to manage the divine wisdom. So, raising men is God's creation, is God's initiative. It was Jesus who initiated it. It's not the disciples who went to Jesus and said, Jesus, please, can't you make us? We want to be made. It was not the disciples who initiated discipleship. It was Jesus who initiated it. And he alone has the correct workable model with which men can be raised. And if you don't follow that model, you will only encounter struggles, difficulties, and ultimate failure. And there are many reasons why people don't like the model of Jesus, because it looks very sluggish. The discipleship model of Jesus looks slow to accomplish a task. You'll be wondering why God should be raising one man for 14 years. Why that long? Why raise one man for 40 years? Is it not too long? So, naturally, man is always in a haste. The nature of man does not appreciate delays at all. That's why any little delay becomes a prayer point to the believer. Is it not? Any little delay has become a major prayer point, because the nature of man does not entertain sluggishness or any form of delay. If God withholds a thing from a man, it becomes a matter, because the human nature loves to be in a haste. That's why men abandoned the discipleship model of Jesus, and we began measuring our success by the crowds we gather. Jesus did not measure his success by crowd. He measured his success by everyone who hears my sayings and does them. That's the measurement. Every man who hears my saying and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on the rock. That's how Jesus measures the success of his work. Someone came to Jesus and said, your mother and your brethren that are there, they want to see you now. He said, who is my mother? Who are my brothers? But everyone who hears the will of my Father and does them, who knows the will of my Father and does, and those who hear my words and do the will of my Father. So how would you, it doesn't matter how many people were outside, even if crowds were looking for him outside, how does Jesus measure the success of his work? Those who hear my sayings and do them. And how many are there? Always very few. So the discipleship model of Jesus is what grows the church. It's not seminar on church growth that only uses human wisdom, humanism, that the foundation is humanism, human methods. See, if you are not honest with God, you will not go far in ministry, in doing what is serious before God, if you are not honest. And if you are not ready to tell the truth, God will not see you as a tool in these last days. Now, the model that men have adopted as a sign and proof of growth is the more branches we have of a church, the more the church is growing. Where did we copy that model from? Is that the model of Jesus? Obviously not. And if you are focusing on number of branches, you will not grow the church. You are going to grow members and not the church. The church of Jesus Christ is spiritual, and not everybody who attends church is part of the church. Not everyone who attends the physical assembly is part of the spiritual assembly. The one the Bible calls the church of the firstborn, that is registered in heaven, not corporate affairs commission, according to Hebrews chapter 13. Are you following me? If we don't know this truth, we're wasting time in church. We must be very down to earth. So when we have adopted strange models, we weaken the structure of the kingdom. But what the Hebrews, is it chapter 12 or so told us? He said, we have received a kingdom, seeing that we have received a kingdom that cannot be shaken. That's the kind of kingdom we received. A kingdom that can be shaken. But we are using our principles to raise weak structures, and we call it the kingdom. Christ's discipleship model is illustrated through his parables. When you read the parables of Jesus, many of them speak of his model, the model of raising men for the kingdom. And that's what the apostles also employed and applied. That's why when you read the book of Acts chapter 6, the Bible didn't say that the members multiplied. It didn't even say that the church multiplied. What did they say? The number of disciples multiplied. They were very specific. Not members, but who? Disciples multiplied. So they were, what makes you know that they used the correct model is because of what happened. Disciples multiplied. So what's the model? What's Jesus' discipleship model that we must follow? Let's illustrate with one or two of his parables. The parable of the mustard seed. Before the seed grew up and became a mighty tree, what happened? What happened to the seed? It was what? Sown and buried. Buried away from public view. That's the first thing you do. Even before the seed decays or dies, the first thing is that the seed is buried away from sight, away from public view. That's the first thing. So when Jesus calls men, he calls them out of a place of fame, a place of comfort, a place of show and performance, to obscurity. Jesus does not raise men in public. He raises men in secret. That's the first issue to note. That the seed must be buried away from sight. Why is discipleship today not applied in the church as it should? Because the very pattern and structure of leadership in the church and raising men does not favor or emphasize obscurity. It is the church's policy to expose you to work immediately after you say you are born again. It is the church, not you self, that wants the work. It is the church that tells you to come and work. In other words, the church is in a hurry to bring you on stage, and that defeats the purpose of Christ's discipleship model. That's why, listen to me. Anytime you go on stage for performance, you have only suspended the hand that would have made you, and that hand will not make you until you come down from the stage. And that stage, I'm using it as a metaphor. I'm not talking about it must be preaching stage. Stage means any area of work that you are performing in public for people to see that you are a child of God, you have arrived. And young people are given to this. After they are born again, few months and few years, they have become preachers, holding meetings, printing handbills, printing banners everywhere, competing on who prays longer and who speaks in tongues longer. They don't want to be buried. The model of Jesus is that no man is raised in public.